Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, a podcast about the strange decision to try to make other humans laugh on purpose. Each episode I sit down with comedians, writers and performers to talk about the stories behind the jokes. It's not a masterclass and it's not therapy, although occasionally it sounds like both. Mostly it's just people who love comedy trying to explain why. I'm the comedy nerd who's seen more than 2,000 different comedians perform live comedy, and you can find out more about my journey in comedy fandom on my website, thecomedynerd.com. Please also take a moment to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is a comedian, actor, and writer whose work blends sharp stand-up with vivid, character-driven comedy across stage, radio, and screen. He's performed and written for platforms including BBC Radio 4 and Channel 4, and is a co-artistic director of the award-winning theatre company Spies Like Us, creating inventive, genre-bending shows known for expressive physicality, bold characters, and high-energy performances. It's comedian Hamish Lloyd Barnes. Was comedy like a big influence on you in the early days, growing up with family television, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking about this. I feel like I don't have like concrete things that I'm like, that was a massive influence, or that was, but yeah, I always loved watching comedy, and I guess like TV sketch was like a big thing growing up. I do have a memory of do you know Summer Heights High?
I'm aware of it, yes.
The Chris Lilly show. I mean, he's like, I guess, like somewhat counselable now, but I think he's made some controversial decisions like in the modern times. But I have a real memory of being really young and my mum watching that on a DVD with her friend, and saying we couldn't watch it, like me and my family friend, and we like snuck in and found the DVD and watched it way too young. But I remember thinking that he was hilarious. And I think, the DNA of some of that, like more like naughty sketch stuff is definitely like still in the stuff I find funny now.
So what was your path in then? Because I know that, you've done more theatrical side, but now when I've seen you performing on stage, it is in character comedy. So what was your route, if you like? How did you begin? So I started off doing the theatre, and I ran a theatre company called Spies Like Us with some friends that we started when we were like 18 or 19. We were all in our first year of uni, and we took a show to the Fringe. And then, we did that. We did 4 shows. We kind of did that from 2017 till about 2022. And obviously with lockdown, a lot of things changed, and it became increasingly harder for us to get money to make shows as 5 people. And before that, I'd done some sketch comedy at university and was always still sort of interested in doing comedy. And I think it was like an interesting comedy and also a annoyance at like the lack of being able to do something bigger with the theatre company. That meant I was like, oh, maybe I'll just try and do stand-up. Which obviously now I know it's still like ridiculously hard to find the money to do, but it felt more achievable. So yeah, I started off doing stand-up as myself, and I did that for about 2 years, and then ended up doing slightly weirder stuff, and now do more character comedy. Do you think that as far as comedy is concerned, you're still sort of finding out your identity, who you are as a stand-up, as a character comedian?
Yeah, I think so. I think, because people say like, well, would you do stand up again? And like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think one thing I've learned is I feel like I never quite know like what's going to happen next on the journey. And I think that's a great thing, right? I want to be open to the different paths that you can take. So I think, I'd be interested to see like what form that would take now I've done the more like character clowny stuff. I imagine like my impulses would be slightly different with stand-up, but I would be open to it. I remember I did a few sets at the Fringe last year doing just stand-up of like the old material that I hadn't done in like a year and a half, and it was quite interesting. I did enjoy it, and it was interesting to like, I felt very different in it. I don't know why, maybe just more like present.
Right. So doing character comedy, does that more compare to acting because you are playing someone else rather than stand up when you are a version of yourself, arguably.
Yeah. I think it definitely feels more similar to acting. I also think, as I was one of those stand-ups where like most people, if they talk to me afterwards, they would be like, "Oh, you're obviously an actor."
Is that a compliment?
And I think that was a bad thing.
Yes.
Well, I think with some people it can be a compliment, but I think it was always very performative, in maybe a way that felt like slightly inauthentic. In a way, I guess that like everyone starting out stand-up is slightly inauthentic, or a lot of people. But I think, yeah, I don't know whether it was a bad thing. I always had I was very animated, and also a lot of my stuff was not. I think it was quite like slightly surreal. Like it wasn't me talking about like myself and dating. It was always like a little bit more high concept. So I think it just, when I started doing like the costume, like putting on a costume, I was like, oh, this just makes a bit more sense for me. And I felt like that felt like a more logical progression. And especially, I guess, like now my one of the characters I do like is an actor. So I guess in some ways I've kind of just taken that feedback and really owned it.
So I do talk to people about the persona of them on stage, sort of how much, particularly in stand-up, how much that is a version of them, or how realistic it is, if you like, how honest they're being as a person on stage, as a version of them. But it must be as liberating, if not more so, when you are specifically playing someone who isn't you. You're protected by that distance, if you like, and that person can say or do things that you yourself might never do. Do you find it more liberating in that sense?
Yeah, I definitely find it liberating. I definitely feel like the different characters I do sort of have a mind of their own, as cliche as that sounds. And I think that was what was really exciting, certainly at the start, with the main character I've been playing, who's sort of like the ghost of an actor, and he's very like outspoken. I found myself like, you know, being a lot more like confident and like cutting and weird with audiences, and it kind of working and being like, God, how did I get away with that? Or how did I even think to say that? And that feeling really exciting, but it kind of felt like when I was that character, it kind of became something bigger than me, which like was cool.
And by the same token, do you find yourself, or do you find your character saying things that, you know, you say, I didn't know I was going to say that? You surprise yourself in that regard.
Yeah. Oh, massively. I feel like as well, I don't know, part of the gag for me with the that character, as well as he's kind of a bad actor as well. So I feel like I feel quite comfortable in like, it kind of works for the character for him to say something that doesn't quite land with the room, to kind of deal with the repercussions of that in a funny way. So I think I feel quite free to like let myself like lose the crowd a little bit, and then sort of use various tactics to like negotiate them back.
Yeah. So does improv then play a big part still?
Yeah, massively. I mean, it's weird because I think the first pivot I had into doing character stuff was I did the Comedy Plus course at Soho Theatre. And at the time it was run by Alf Lyons, who's brilliant. And we were pretty much all stand-ups doing it, I think, and we were all people that have been doing it for like 2 years or so, or 3 years. And I remember her saying to me, she kind of made us all do something that wasn't stand-up for the showcase. And so we're all doing these like characters or whatever. And I remember she said to me something like, you need to like, you like to be in control of everything that happens on stage. And at the time it was like very scripted. And so I think in my head I was like, oh, let me do something in the showcase that rescinds a bit of that control and lets me play in the improv. And then now it's become such a part of my act, to the point where like sometimes I'll do a set that's completely unscripted, if the room is liking it, and I'll just kind of, I like to kind of see how much I can do that isn't prepared, and then I've always got the bits that I know that I can kind of come back to if that's not working.
You did Gaulier as well. So, I mean, is study a big part of it? You seem to be like someone who's done the research kind of thing, where comedy is kind of a great leveler in the sense that anyone can basically get a spot on the stage, go up and do 5 minutes without any training or qualifications or anything. It's very freeing and open to access. You've taken a certain strand of it where you have been studious, if you like. You study Gaulier. You've done the course with Elf. Is that true, would you say?
Yeah, I guess. Well, that I only did that last year. So that came like after having done like gigged for like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
And that, did I think that made me more confident in improvising and also I maybe took a bit of like numbed my sense of self-worth a little bit so that I'm like more open to like it not being perfect in a good way, I think. So yeah, I think is study a big part of it. Yeah, I think I've always just also like I love learning about comedy and kind of philosophizing about it. So I think that the study element was always interesting to me. But I guess I don't think about it too much like I try not to be too intellectual about it with like the kind of generating of material or like performing itself. I think it needs to be more whatever is more instinctive than that, maybe.
Well, let's think about then coming from acting and then going into doing comedy. Like you said, you did some stand-up and then you'd gone into character. How did you find what you anticipated doing comedy meant and what the reality of actually performing it turned out to be? What were your expectations? What surprises did you encounter?
Interesting. I feel like the first thing I think of, which I think is the thing a lot of people have, is like being like I definitely underestimated how much hard work it was to like get to the big leagues. I think maybe you're like you do your first gig and it, I think look, if I watch the footage back now, I'd be like, God, that was kind of bad, but it felt good at the time. And I was like, oh, great, I'll be doing, maybe I'll do an Edinburgh show next year and then I'll be on TV, and then like, obviously you get 10 gigs in, you realize you're awful. And it's like a massive learning curve. So yeah, definitely the progression was a part of it. Also, I suppose you don't really know, like I often think, obviously when you start out, there's a lot of bringer gigs if you want to go down that route. And I often think like my friends were always really keen to come because I think in their mind, they're like, oh, you're doing stand-up. It'll be like, 300 people in this, like, or it'll be like top secret or something. And then your friends come and watch you do 5 minutes to a basement full of 10 people. And so I think that part of it as well of being like realizing the different levels to it was definitely a big part of the learning curve at first.
Yeah. And when you think about that first gig doing stand-up and then the first time doing character comedy, I mean, how different were they? How different were those experiences? How did they compare and contrast?
Yeah, well, interestingly, the first time I did stand-up, I sort of did do a character, but it was kind of this weird hybrid. Basically, I had a bit where I pretended that I was Where's Wally's son. And it was kind of like, but I was called myself and I wore these glasses. Probably not great for the podcast, but and like a striped top, and I had this bit about that I was a nepo baby, and I kind of had a few jokes about how like he was a dad that was like never around because he was always traveling for work.
Yeah.
And insert like 5 minutes of jokes about him, and it was fine. Yeah. But so I guess I did sort of start with character because I think because of my background in doing sketch stuff, that was kind of the only way I could comprehend writing jokes was like a premise of sorts.
Right.
And then after that, I kind of started, I think that going decently well gave me the courage to write more traditional stand-up-y jokes. But I remember a big thing for me that I found interesting when I first did character stuff was because I've been, with as you say, you talk a lot with stand-ups about persona. And I think I found it quite difficult, that thing of trying to distill yourself to this kind of cartoon character. And I think I found it a bit of an existential process towards the end, because people would say stuff to, like, I remember people saying to me like, oh, you should talk more about how you sound posh. And I was kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, that doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
But then I remember, like, I had a joke about having a posh voice that I chucked in, and that always went really well. And then I was like, well, maybe I need to do that and follow that more. And then I didn't really find much joy in that.
Yeah.
And I think I found it slightly frustrating how with stand-up, when you came on stage, there's kind of like the non-negotiable parts of you that come across that you kind of have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think I was just finding that a bit frustrating, because I didn't really want to talk about that. And I remember the first time I did a character thing at the Soho Labs showcase, I was talking to someone in the bar afterwards for about 10 minutes, and then they went, oh, I've just realized that was you. And something about that felt really liberating at a time where I was kind of feeling a bit annoyed about having to deal with who I was. That I could just, in character, like, I could decide what I brought to the table, and I could decide what people saw. Obviously not to a 100% degree, but you can kind of curate that. That was exciting to me.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about improvisation, and it's always that thing about being present in the room and acknowledging in the room. So, and like some comedians will come out, if they have like a North American accent, for example, they have to address that fact. Otherwise it's sort of hanging there the whole time.
Yeah.
Is that sort of part of that, where you're playing a character, but you are still elements of you, and recognizing what people are going to pick up on, and maybe having to address it and include that as part of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think well, it's nice to be like, oh, these are the things that people will see, and like then I can play off that.
Yeah.
And also I think it's funny as well to have sort of glaring holes and not really address them. Like, I realized the ghost character I have, I don't wear any shoes or socks, and that is kind of because the truthful reason is because I don't have the money to have, it's quite a like grand costume, and then like shoes that would fit that are quite expensive. And the first time I tried it, I was like, well, I'm not going to buy like crazy shoes that cost like £50 to fit this character, so I'll just go like barefoot. And it also does give me a kind of springy quality, which I quite like. But I think I never address the fact that I'm not wearing any shoes. And often like people will say like, God, why are you barefoot? And I'm like, it's a great question. So I think there's something funny to me as well about like making big choices visually that don't get addressed. And I also think that's interesting when stand-ups do that, which I guess goes against the rule book of like, you know, making choices to like not really address big parts of them feels quite radical in that world where people feel the need to like justify everything up top.
Well, how about then, again, with an acting background and trying out different styles of comedy, at what point do you refer to yourself as a comedian?
It's a great question. I don't know. I think everyone finds that a bit icky to like take on, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I sort of have now. I think maybe when it became like a thing I was more interested in than, I don't know. I find it hard, labels like that as well, because for me, people often say to me like, oh, do you enjoy, like, if you could do one, would you rather do like acting or writing or comedy? And the honest truth is like, I kind of see them all as the same thing. Like it's all this just different expressions of like the same muscles. And so, yeah, I find it quite hard to, well, not hard, but I find it like weird, the idea of being like if someone that, I mean, there's obviously so many massive comedians that are actors and writers as well.
Yeah.
And the idea of being like, oh, I'm going to stop being a comedian now and I'm going to start being an actor because I've like been in a sitcom feels quite strange. I think, yeah, it's kind of all the same thing to me. But yeah, at what point did I call myself a comedian? I'm not sure. Maybe when I put it in my Instagram bio, which was probably about a year ago. Yeah.
So where coming at it from a different angle then, what's your comfort zone? So do you find yourself happiest in the writing, in performing as a character, in doing like more straight stand-up, if you like, or in acting or like voice roles? Where are you at your happiest?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Yeah, because I think there's that thing of like an actor is or like comedians are sometimes like writers who perform or like performers who write.
Yes, yeah.
And I think I am more of a performer, in terms of like that's what came first. And then I think I started writing stuff because I wanted to do things and I wasn't doing things. So I was like, right, well, I'll write some stuff. But I have become really fond of that process as well. I think though something I've noticed as well, in terms of like my writing process recently, I've realized like I'm much better at writing when I sort of improvise. So, and I think the writing I write when I sit down at a desk or like sit in a cafe, as nice as that is, tends to not be as good as if I kind of force myself to walk around my room talking or come up with something on stage and then keep saying it. So I think maybe I'm more comfortable as a performer. But I do really enjoy both sides of it.
Yeah. How about keeping yourself entertained? When you are an entertainer and you're regurgitating lines that you've carefully crafted and prepared, or even if you're improvising, do you, for example, keep jokes in that don't land just because you think they're funny, that sort of thing? How do you keep going day after day? And we're going to talk about Edinburgh Fringe when you'll have 20, 25 dates performing over and over and over again, and you've got to get to the end and the last show be as well received as the first. So
yeah,
where are you in all of that? Are you able to keep it fresh and entertaining in your own mind?
I think I recently I kind of I tend to like not decide the order of stuff I do concretely. So I'll like have a list of the jokes and you know a general flow of it, but I'll try and sort of play, especially for a gig, be like, okay, I've got these like 10 jokes or bits that I could do, and then maybe I know the one I'm going to start with, and I know the one that maybe is going to be good to end on. And then I can kind of just go with the flow of the room as to the order of it. And then I find that keeps me not bored. And then also within that, following whatever happens in the room. I think as well, I like to build in stuff, little games with different audience members. And that obviously plays out, you know, different ways every time. And I think that keeps me interested and in the room.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I did that as well, because I think the last few bits I did of like quote unquote normal stand-up were also very like there was a lot of room for just messing around in the room. And I think part of me was just a reaction to like doing so many gigs and getting bored of doing like the type 5 or type 10 or whatever. So yeah, I think I like to just make it a little bit different. And yeah, I think, am I someone who keeps stuff in if people aren't liking it? I think I've definitely been guilty of like hanging on to something for too long, but I think as well, like if the audience aren't enjoying it, I'm not enjoying it generally. So I think I would struggle to like keep something in if it was getting absolutely nothing. But there's definitely bits I've been like too wedded to.
And the other thing is collaboration. Again, like I say, you know, striking out as someone who's performing on their own, either as themselves or as a character of someone else, it loses that partly the protection, partly the camaraderie, if you like, of performing with an ensemble. So how important is collaboration for you in terms of writing or working with directors or getting feedback from peers and that sort of thing? Are you a collaborative person in essence, or is being on stage alone, is that a more driving, more inspiring position to be in?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely collaborative. I try, and I've done a few which have been really useful recently, like getting together with another comedian and spending an afternoon kind of bouncing stuff off each other. I find that really useful. I also, for the show I'm making, I'm working with a director that I made the theatre shows that I'd done with. So we have like a really good working relationship. And he's been really useful with that. And I suppose as well, you know, as like as cliche as it sounds, like the audience is also a big collaborator, or the best collaborator you can have with the comedy stuff, because yeah, just kind of trying stuff live and listening for the reaction and kind of evolving it from there is yeah, the main thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I also, whilst I love collaboration, I think the thing I love about comedy as well is having that autonomy and being like, okay, I can call all the shots, for better or worse.
Well, let's talk about Fringe then. As you said, you've been to the Edinburgh Festival with Spice Like Us. So how has your overall Fringe experience been, and how has it changed from the first time to what you anticipate for yourself this year?
Yeah, I mean, great. My family are from Edinburgh, so I've like been going as a punter since I was like tiny. So yeah, I feel like I have a long relationship with the Fringe. But yeah, the first time I went was part of a youth company when I was like 16, and it was the best summer ever in many ways, because it was like, you know, it was like the first time being away from home for a long time. We were like sneaking into clubs and stuff and doing all that, and doing like quite a bad show about social media written by people who hadn't been on social media, but it was like a lot of fun. And I met some of my like, you know, best friends doing it. I think this year it will be a lot more like a lot more work than play. I imagine I'll probably be a lot more sensible, and yeah, will obviously be very different being there on my own. So yeah, I'm anticipating it to be maybe a bit more lonely and a bit more of a job than previous times, but I am very excited to do it as well.
Yeah, but obviously you'll have the opportunity, as well as doing your own show, you'll be looking, one presumes, for spots, so you can do in some form a collaboration with other artists, in the sense that you are advertising your own show, but you are on stage with other people.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I mean, I know so many people going up, obviously, so who will be in similar boats. So yeah, looking forward to propping each other up.
Well, then tell me about the show. So this will be your character debut then this year. So what's the show? What can people expect to see?
So the show is called Stage Presence, and it is set in a haunted theatre the night it gets demolished. And I play all of the ghosts who are essentially trying to like tie up their unfinished business before they die. And I play some of the furniture as well. So I play like the curtains who talk in the sort of Beauty and Beast-esque move. And yeah, the idea kind of was like, I really love watching. Well, I've watched so many amazing character shows, and I always am like, oh, I'd love it if all these worlds collided. And so it's kind of my attempt at fulfilling that, of like, all of the characters have their own self-contained bits, but you kind of gradually work out that there's like a wider narrative, and they're all connected through the kind of history of what's happened in this building.
And what about that word debut then? Does that have weight? Does that wear heavy around you? Like going in with and advertising yourself essentially to the trade fair that is the Fringe?
Yeah, obviously it has weight. I think for me, I've always found that difficult, the idea of like, because I think people wait a very, very long time to do it. And I get that, especially with the like financial burden that the Fringe is. But I think, I don't know, I'm trying not to kind of focus on that too much, and just like, I've been really enjoying making something longer. And it's been nice as well, obviously, with my background in theatre. I forgot how much I enjoyed, like, you know, there's certain things you can do in an hour that you obviously can't do in 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's been really lovely being able to like create that world. And so, yeah, I think I always got into comedy because I loved watching people's hours at the Fringe, and like so many shows that I loved in that capacity. And that's always where my focus was. So I just kind of was like, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
And I also think I'm really motivated by, like, I mean, some of the people I love and the people that I'm watching, and I'm like, wow, they're really doing some amazing stuff, are people that are making like their 7th or 8th show. So I was kind of like, well, I better get on with it if I want to sort of get to that area. So yeah, I thought I'd just take the plunge, but it is a bit daunting for sure.
Yeah. But you still watch comedy then? Do you watch it as an audience member? Are you a good audience member? Or are you one of the people now who is analytical and says, oh, well, I would have done that differently? Or, well, I see what you've done there. That kind of backhanded comment.
I think I'm a good audience member, because I think I think I also have a lot of like empathy for how it feels to be up there now I've done it. So I like to kind of make sure I'm not being horrible in someone's show. But yeah, I mean, obviously you watch it with a slightly different lens after doing comedy. But yeah, I think the best stuff is stuff that makes you kind of switch that side of your brain off and you're just enjoying it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess a bit of both, really.
Yeah. And how about your competitive side? So, for example, the Fringe itself, obviously, you're competing with thousands of other shows for audiences' attention. But also, you were nominated for in Sketch Off this year, for example, and other competitions, West End, that sort of thing. What about those direct competitions against your peers, but also the competitive side of the Fringe? Do you have a fiercely competitive streak, or are you much more laissez-faire, shall we say?
Yes, I think, obviously, I guess similarly with the debut thing, it's like I'd be lying if I said that you don't, start comparing. I think, I hate competitions. I think that it's always like the worst gig, which is weird as well, because often, like with the Sketch Off, it's like it's always a full room and people, often the crowd's really up for it. So it should be great. But I'd be lying if I said that I didn't, that part of my brain that like compares myself to others isn't like activating in those times. But I think I try and switch that off as much as I can, just because I think, it is so unhealthy. And it also, I think, like early on doing not major competitions, but like those, there's so many of those little like open mic competitions. And I'd often think like taking myself out of it, I'd be like, oh, I don't know if I would have put that person first or not, because they were, but just I think you realize how subjective it is. And so I think I just try and turn that side of my brain off. When you do that, it then becomes so much better. Like for the Sketch Off, I kind of just tried to, I mean, my mentality with the competitions is always like, the thing I can control is like how I do the gig, right? So I want to my goal here is to have a fun gig. And if I do that, then that's great.
Yeah.
And that was just always my goal. And then I think once I like freed myself up from trying to go through, I then started performing so much better than I ever would have. So, and obviously the further you get, it's harder and harder to like sever into your brain in that way. But I think I am sort of prone to thinking about it, but I try and not to, because I do think it's unhealthy. And also, you're never going to win, are you? Because it's so subjective. So I try and not think about it too much, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, how about then when you think about objectives and that, do you set yourself targets? Do you have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, or is it very much opportunities as they arise?
Yeah, it's more opportunities as they arise. I used to be that guy that had I would like put goals for the year every year. And then like 2 years ago, I think the year I went to Gaulier, I was like thinking about my year. And I was like, oh, all the best things I've done this year were like things I wouldn't have even known were possible or like on the cards at all at the start of the year. And so I guess I shifted my mindset and was like, well, let me just see what comes up. And I've got a general, like, I want to keep making shows and I want them to be the best they can be. And I want to get better as a comedian. But how, tangibly that happens, I think, I kind of came to terms with the fact that maybe I can't predict exactly what is reasonable to expect within a year or 5 years. So I kind of gave up doing that. But generally just want to sort of keep doing more of the same and getting better and doing bigger rooms and what have you.
Yeah. So do you think that there's so far one single important lesson that you've learned? One thing that sort of informs your philosophy going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe it is that of just like you never know what is around the corner, or like you never really know anything. Um, yeah, maybe it is that. I also think a lot of the like best things, or the points of like real progress or growth, have often for me come from like points of feeling like really low. Or just like feeling like, yeah, what is the point? So I think maybe that perspective of like just keep trucking along, really. And not getting too lost in the bad times, and not getting too swept up in the good times. Just maintaining a happy medium.
Well, I was interested to learn that obviously you are voicing the Weasley twins in the upcoming Harry Potter. So
yes,
I mean that is very well established, as opposed to a role that you are establishing in and of yourself. When you have a pressure on you for something that's well loved and well established in that sense, but also then you are forging your own path and creating your own expectations of an audience. How wide is that gap? How wide is that gulf? Or are you, as you say, taking things up as they come and just jumping in and enjoying it for what it is for yourself?
How was it doing that part with the kind of established world?
Exactly, very much so.
Yes. How was that? Yeah, I guess daunting. I think it was nice because it was the books, so there's a lot more content than there is in the films. It felt like it was sort of a slightly different beast, and they could become like different characters. I also like the team, the directors were very keen for it to be like not an impression of the films. And so the headline was kind of like bring something different to it, which was actually nice, because that was a guiding point almost, was like, okay, don't do what was in the films. Okay, cool. And now I know what not to do. Also, because they wanted the Weasleys to be from the West Country. So they're like I think in the books it says that the borough is in Devon. But yeah, we had to do this sort of weird West Country accent that was, I think, essentially based around what the kid who played Ron could do. So it was like this weird hybrid of RP and not. But I think also they wanted it to sound like they were they'd kind of grown up in Devon and then gone to like this posh school, which I guess they have. So it was kind of like certain sounds, like it was the sort of Bath vowels. It's like Bath, class, pass. But yeah, I think that definitely gave it a different it gave it a distinction that made me feel like different. And I think also that accent in itself like kind of gave it a different characterization. I kind of found myself thinking more about like Curtin from This Country than than the films. But yeah, no, it was a really, really fun process. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
We've talked a lot more about accents than I anticipated we would.
I know. Well, it kind of was a big thing on my in the development of my show, because it did again with Elf this course called like How to Build Your Dream Show, which I would really recommend to anyone. And it's very it was very like instrumental in me in the development of it, because I went into that course, this was in November, being like, I'm going to do an hour of me just being one character and me doing one of these ghost actors. And then we did an exercise in that where she made us all like go around and say some skills that we had, and they could be like as trivial as like I've got good handwriting, or as impressive as like I can do a somersault. And it was all about like building the show from your skills first, as opposed to like premise first. And one of my skills was like, oh, I think I can do different accents from like the voice work I've done. And then she just made me like do loads of accents for everyone. And then I kind of realized like, I don't know if she said it or someone else said it or I just thought it. I was kind of like, why am I doing, if that's like my go-to skill, why am I doing one character in this show? And yeah, it kind of grew from there. And I think whenever I'm making a character, it kind of does the voice. I didn't really notice this until people said it from watching some of my work in progresses. Like the voice, I think, really informs the characterization for me and like allows me to jump off from there.
Yeah. I think it's like, do you feel like you start with the voice? Because something I think it was Charles Dickens said, you start with the name and the name tells you everything you need about the character.
Ah, that's interesting.
You spend a lot of time coming up with the name. Do you start with the voice? Does the accent first dictate what their nature is?
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say is it's definitely not the name for me because I find naming characters very hard. I often just kind of look at something nearby and go like, oh yeah, I'll call it, I'll use that name of that book or something. Yeah, I think it is for me. I think with the writing as well, like once I've cracked the voice of something, I can write the jokes a lot more easily. And I think, yeah, I just have fun to do a different voice. I don't know what it is. I think it's just like the joy to kind of be like sound different. I think I find really fun on a very childish level. Yeah, for sure.
Is it that separation again? And I've done this before where I've compared a character act to like a ventriloquist act in that it's not you, it's somebody else. You've given that division, that separation. So if they have a different voice to yours, then they are another person and you are protected in that sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think it as well is like, it's something about like if it sounds like me, I'm kind of limited to like the limitations of me in my head maybe, and it's like, oh, I'd do that, I wouldn't do that, or I think this, I wouldn't. But I think as soon as I sound like someone else, I'm like, oh well, I don't know what the rules are with this person, so I can kind of just play with them. I also think, yeah, there is something interesting about the character stuff on stage of like, there's almost then a game of like you behind the character kind of commenting on what the character's saying, so you can kind of say more outrageous things or weirder things and kind of draw back as the performer and be like, look at this guy, and that seems to be fun. But yeah, I think the voice is like for me definitely really instrumental.
So what do you think then thus far have been the best and worst single experiences you've had through comedy?
What gigs wise?
It can be gigs, can be an experience you might not otherwise not have been able to have. People you've met, places you've performed.
That's a good question. I think, yeah, a lot of bad ones come to mind. Thing is, I have a lot of like things that were like on paper bad, but because they were very funny, it was not, I wouldn't call it like a bad gig. I'd say the worst gig I did was maybe I did the Blackout like really early on.
Yeah.
And I I was doing stand up. I think it was like my 9th gig or something. And I think because it's like such a big audience compared to like the open mic gigs, I was like, right, well, I need so much energy. So I like ran on stage with all this energy and like screamed into the mic. And I think everyone was like, God, who is this guy? It was way too much. I don't know why. I never opened with this joke. And I didn't say it for very long, but I opened with this joke. I basically had this joke that was what was the joke? It was like I got told the other day that I have the body of a Greek god, not because I've got muscles, but because I've got a micro penis. And you know, that's a fine joke. It's certainly not an opener. And I went on with all this like misplaced confidence, like screaming into the mic, strutting around the stage, said that with like real enthusiasm to just silence. And then obviously in those rooms, like once you've like, you kind of, if you've lost them, you've absolutely lost them. And then, so that was really bad. And it was also because it was like the first time it had gone really badly and it was in front of so many people. So that was that probably was the one that like stung the most as a bad gig. But looking back, very funny.
You got an anecdote out of it.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I always think. What else? I feel like I've got so many like bad or weird ones. I had a thing where So the act I did that kind of got me into doing alternative stuff that I developed on the labs course was I'd like pretend I'd dress up as a penguin, and I'd like play the voiceover of this nature documentary and essentially like act it out. And it kind of became like, as I got more comfortable with it, I just kind of like mess around in the room as this animal, and people would like sort of let me do whatever. And I did a gig once where the air conditioner was leaking. It was above this pub, and so there was this really weird vibe where there were like 3 rows of audience, a gap where there was a bucket because the air conditioner was dripping into it, and then like 3 rows of audience behind it. And as I was on stage, I was like, well, I feel like this penguin would just like explore this drip. So I went over and like put my tongue under the drip, and then everyone was like, oh God, and then obviously just didn't do that again. Kept going on, and then the next day I got a message, and it said like at the start of the message was like, hey, were you I saw your set last night. And I was like, oh, here we go, like someone messaging me, they're my biggest fan, whatever. And this guy was like, I saw your set last night. I was really concerned when you put your tongue under the air conditioner, because I think there's a very real chance you could have Legionnaire's disease.
Honestly, that's the first thing that leapt into my head when you said you put your
Really?
I was like, oh my God, instant Legionnaire's.
Well, I didn't know what that was. And then obviously I Googled it, and it's like like what is it? What it's like a kind of thing that they got in the trenches, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's bacterial from standing water.
Yeah,
because that water would have been sitting in that air conditioner for God knows how long.
Yeah, well, I only did it for like one drip, but anyway, I got really paranoid and went to the GP and had to explain like this story to a doctor.
Yeah, what happened? Well, I was a penguin.
Yeah, literally, I was like, well, I do this act, and he just looked at me like I was insane, and he said, I think he was like, if you were like 80 years old and you were living in that room for years, you'd get Legionnaire's disease, but I think you're fine. So yeah, things like that.
What about the other side of the coin? What about the best?
The best. That's hard as well, because I feel like, yeah, I mean, doing the Leicester Square final was a real, like, felt like a milestone, and definitely the biggest crowd I'd done. But also I feel like sometimes those bigger stakes gigs are like less fun to do because you're kind of trying to get it right as opposed to just mess around. Like, I think I'm best as a performer where the stakes are just on the floor. So I probably have most fun just messing around at like small open mics where it's like, well, who cares?
Yeah.
I think I had the first time I did like a longer version of this show in January felt like a real high because it was the longest I've been on stage, and it was also, I don't know, just that feeling of like, oh, I think I've maybe got something that will work was really exciting. Especially because, yeah, for so long it's been the goal to kind of do something longer.
Yeah.
I think having that feeling of like, oh, okay, this thing I put a lot of effort into might just work on some level was that was really nice.
Yeah.
I'd maybe say that.
So how can people find out all about you and where they can come and see you performing?
Probably on my Instagram, which is HamishLB123. And yeah, kind of there. Everything's on there in the bio links. I've got next one is on the 24th of May at the Hen and Chickens. And then I'll be doing it in London kind of quite a few times before Fringe. So those will all be announced on Instagram.
So we've reached then my final question, which is always the same question, of course, because it is the title of the show. So how would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
This is hard, isn't it? I would probably say like good stories, just because I always think whenever I'm at those gigs where like, you know, someone's accusing me of getting Legionnaire's disease or like, you know, you're in the basement of a pub on a Monday and like, you know, someone does something crazy and I feel like I always have great anecdotes for like friends or my housemates or whatever after going to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm often like, oh God, whatever happens, whether I keep doing this or not, I'm happy that I've made the decision to do this. And like, you know, what's the other alternative? Like being sat at home on a Monday, watching Married at First Sight and cooking a chili. I'm happy that I'm making these weird memories and having these, like, meeting these people.
Hamish, thank you so much for being my guest. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
No, it's been a pleasure.